Welcome to the Fit for Success podcast. Brian Semling is an experienced entrepreneur with over 25 years in business. He is the founder and CEO of Blitz Innovation. He has built several brands such as Brian's Toys, a collectible toy business, to several Amazon FBA brands like Strictly Bricks and Clever Creations. His latest adventure is Rovux, a modern athleisure footwear brand which can be found at rovuxfootwear.com. On the podcast, Brian will talk with other entrepreneurs and social media influencers about their entrepreneurial journey, from what it takes to start and run a business to how they may continue to grow their brands and where they see themselves in their businesses in the future. And now, here's your host, Brian Semling.
Welcome to the Fit for Success podcast. I'm Brian Semling. Today, our guest is Jaden Rae, the founder of Steamy Kitchen. Welcome, Jaden.
Thank you. And I'm so happy to have a chance to talk with you and your listeners and your viewers about business and whatever, cooking, food, whatever it is that you want to talk about today.
Yeah. Well, let's get started by just getting to know you a little bit. So if you could just tell us about your background and your business and how you've gotten to where you are in your business.
Sure. 17 years ago, we just celebrated our 17th birthday 2 weeks ago.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you so much. 17 years ago, I started a food blog. And back then, nobody knew what a food blog was. And on my business cards, back then we had business cards, right? On my business card, I had to write, I was like, what do I write? How do people know what I do? And I ended up writing alternative journalist because nobody knew what the word blog was. And this 17 years ago, Pinterest was not even born. Instagram was not even born. So we were in the very early days. And I started a food blog because I was teaching at a local cooking school. And I needed a place to store all of the recipes for my students. And I got tired of printing everything out and emailing everything to the recipes to everybody. So I started the blog and I really discovered that, oh my gosh, this is so much fun. Creating recipes and talking about food and teaching people the difference between soy sauce and fish sauce. Back then I was focusing on Asian cuisine. That was just something that I really wanted to do. I was good at, and the opportunities came very, very fast. Within 6 months, I had a book deal. I was on television all the time. And I was, just exploring the idea of, my dream was to have my own cooking show on the Food Network. And so I was building up my business towards that process. And I was actually in the lobby of Food Network for a meeting. And I was just sitting there waiting for my turn. And I called my ex-husband and I was like, I'm so close to getting what I want and achieving the goals that I had set for myself. Why am I so unhappy? And I was just sitting there. I'm like, I'm at the freaking Food Network. The sign's behind me. And why am I crying? And it was because I had 2 toddlers at home. And I was gone all the time. I was traveling all the time. And I never got to see my kids, reach some of their milestones. I miss some of the major birthdays and events at school and the first. And so I was like, this is not the way. And so I had to rebuild my business and do a whole new business plan and build something that fit my lifestyle better. So
you've shared with me that you've implemented the 4-hour work week. So what you just described was maybe the opposite direction, but I've read the book. I'm guessing a number of our in our audience have read the book. It's been out a while now. And I think a lot of people, it's a well-known book. I suspect that many people have read it and that very few people have implemented it. So go ahead. And
yeah, so I read the 4-hour work week very, very early on. And in fact, I'm featured in one of Tim Ferriss's books called The 4-Hour Chef. And I've contributed a recipe to his cookbook, companion cookbook. But back then it was a 4-hour work week. I read, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is what I need to do. And, I built a 4-hour work week and, I designed the business so that I would have a maximum amount of free time, because one of my core beliefs is that the game of life isn't about money. The game of life is about time and controlling your time. And we spoke earlier, and I'm really big on, controlling your narrative and controlling your time, because that to me is my quality of life. But, building a 4-hour work week was so much fun. The first few years, I learned how to quilt. I learned how to crochet, knit. I had 5 acres of gorgeous property in Florida, and we grew all of our own food. I learned how to raise chickens and do aquaponics and hydroponics. And then I ran out of things to do, and, hobbies to learn. And I would just wake up every morning like, oh my God, what am I going to do today? Because I don't have to work. What am I going to do today? And then day after day of having that repeat itself really got me incredibly depressed. I gained a lot of weight. I wasn't really exercising, and I was eating the wrong foods, and my focus was really off. And it turned out that I was asking myself the wrong question. So when you think about building a 4-hour work week, you think about the primary question you ask is, how can I make the maximum amount of money working the least amount of hours?
Yep.
Which is a lot of fun to think about and to brainstorm and to implement. But then you get to a point where you're like, where's the meaning, and where's my level of contribution? And, what is this all, where's my purpose? And so I had to, I was asking myself the wrong question, and I had to flip it around and, create a new question for myself every single day, and create a new question for, how to run a business.
Well, congratulations on implementing the 4-hour work week. And it created some, like you said, you ended up with free time and hobbies and growing your own food, and then almost getting, I don't know if bored is the right word, but sort of running out of things to do.
Well, it was restlessness combined with a lack of purpose.
Yeah.
And, we spoke a little bit earlier, and another one of my core beliefs around business as well as, personal life is you ask yourself, okay, what's my life purpose? What's my singular life purpose? And that question and that answer process is very elusive. It's just you can never get to the right answer. And I don't believe in having a singular purpose. And instead, I believe in living with intention. Every morning I live purposefully instead of finding purpose. And, that became my new question of, running the business is, how can I live with intention? How can I, run my business with intention today? And what do I need to do today to impact somebody's life and to live with purpose?
To step back for a minute and to think about where you were at, unhappy, busy, missing some, significant moments, and then transitioning to the 4-hour work week on the other side, which was, we skipped over the process of actually doing it. It sounds like it was a fun challenge to implement, and we don't have a whole lot of time here, but give us a little bit of insight into how you were able to go from being, it sounds like, overextended or significantly extended, being away from your toddlers or small children at times, to the extreme of the 4-hour work week. What were some of the 2-3 key points or highlights that you implemented to make that successful? Because I think that's
so number one is I quit social media for a big number of years because someone could spend half their working life just on social media. And especially with a business like mine, where it's all online, a lot of people have built their business running social media and, and marketing through social media. And I just decided, you know what? I was focused on Twitter and Pinterest, and all of a sudden they changed the rules about what they like to see. Pinterest used to be you could post on Pinterest a really long image with lots of text, big text, and the longer the better. And then they changed the rules, and we're like, oh crap! Now we've got to switch around so that we can appease the masters at Pinterest. And same thing with Instagram. And I just decided, I'm not going to play by anybody else's game anymore. I'm better off creating my own platform that I can control. So in addition to the blog, so that's also our email list. And so I really put a lot of focus and attention early on increasing my email list, because I don't have, those are, I can control the narrative with email versus on Instagram or on Pinterest or, even on Facebook. It's, someone else's role. So that's number one, is I quit social media. Now I'm back on. My team is coaxing me to, come on, Jaden, you can do it. It's not that hard. I spend a little bit of time on social. So that was the first thing, was I freed up my time by not having to do social media. And then the second thing was really analyzing, what is it that people want? Back then it was recipes, and people wanted gorgeous photographs and simple recipes. So that's what I gave them, was a gorgeous photograph and a really simple recipe that they can cook tonight. So I would always ask myself, like, if I was to create a recipe, how can I simplify it so much that someone says, oh, I can do this tonight? And that was, one of the things, that one of the filters in producing content was that.
Cool. So over the years, what were some of your other challenges that you faced? You talked us through a few, but what are some, all entrepreneurs go through different challenges over the years. And you've talked about, kind of the time commitment on the one hand, and then the lack of time commitment and looking for purpose on the other. But what were some of the, and we've talked about social media a little bit, but what are some of the challenges that you faced that you had to overcome?
And I'm going to add on one more thing to the third thing I forgot to mention when building for our work, because I used free resources that like public relations and being on television, because that's free. Yep. And also I get to reach millions of people instead of spending my time on social media. I really focused on, okay, so how can I use television appearances or radio appearances to spread the message about Steamy Kitchen? And the funny thing is, once you get one media appearance on television, everything else just follows really quickly. So it's really just that first one. And, I was fortunate enough to be on the Today Show, the CBS Early Show. I've been on Martha Stewart, Oprah.com. So I've, in addition to Tim Ferriss's book, once I got that one, it just kind of snowballed.
The dominoes of, hey, I was on the Today Show. So then the CBS Early Show wants you, and then Oprah.com wants you. And or it at least opens the door for you to get into their front door, basically.
Exactly. So that was a big part of how Steamy Kitchen grew, was like I was always on the media, but it was it was easy to get, because back then I was, something new like food blogging was different. Right. So, it was a lot easier. Now it's a little bit more difficult. Right. But to answer your other question, some of the challenges was, like, when I first started Steamy Kitchen, I had no money whatsoever. And I was like, okay, how do I learn how to be on TV? How do, I want to do live appearances. So how am I going to do? I can't afford a consultant. Right. And how do I restructure my business? I can't afford a board of directors. And so I used a couple of different methods. That the first one is, my imaginary board of directors. So it's kind of like, people ask themselves, WWJD, what would Jesus do? Well, I would always ask myself, what would Martha Stewart do? What would Oprah do? And I assembled an imaginary board of directors. Like, Oprah doesn't know, but she's on my board of directors. And Rachel Ray doesn't know it, but she was my acting coach. And I studied people. Yeah. And I would watch how Rachel Ray would be on TV, and she was so bubbly and so relatable, and people just loved her. And so I really watched and studied her and pretended like she was my consultant. And that really helped me. And the method that I use is the 3 M's. So the first M is when you're learning a new skill, is to mimic. You find someone that you want to mentor, you want to be your mentor, and you just mimic them, practice in front of a mirror. And that's how I learned how to do live television, was watching Rachel Ray and watching Martha Stewart and how they related to people, mannerisms, stand in front of the mirror and pretend I was Rachel Ray. And that M, the next M is, after mimicking, is mirroring. So once your body starts getting used to certain movements, and you start getting used to ways of saying things and relating, looking into the camera, then you inject some of your style. And so it's almost a mimic. You're mimicking somebody, but you still have a little bit of your own flair and your own style. And then the last M is, after you practice, you make it your own. Like now, I started off with mimicking people that I love on television, but now I'm so comfortable in my body that, I make it my own, and I have my own style and my own flair when I do television.
Rovox, where fashion meets fitness.
That's really, I guess, insightful, I think, to an extent, that you, instead of hiring people or even really talking to the experts, you self-taught yourself. You basically looked at the experts and said, like, they were your imaginary consultants on your board, and you're like, I can study from them. They're not going to talk to me, but I can study from them. I can.
Oh no, they full on talk to me. We're at the grocery store and like someone's in my, Martha Stewart's whispering in my ear and I'm talking back and people around me are thinking I'm crazy.
But you've got this, this insight that obviously what they're doing is working, right? And at the end, you end up like making it your own, like you said. So you do have to be yourself and authentic, but how do you get to that point was, mimicking.
Practice. I always say that body first, mind follows. So that's one of my, core beliefs in business and skill. Body first, mind follows, because it's really hard to change your mind. It is really hard to force yourself to get up and go to the gym when you don't feel like going, right? It's hard to change your mind first, but to force myself to walk to the car is really easy. My body actually, the moment my body starts moving, my mind can catch up like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. And, same thing with, learning a new skill, like, let's just get your body moving in a certain way, and then your mind will catch up and mind will follow. So I always say, get your body moving. Just like, you love fitness, your whole business right now is around fitness. And, when people put on your shoes and they're like, oh, this feels good. My body feels good wearing these, and the stride feels great. And then, your mind can catch up like, maybe I'll go for a run, or I'll go, go work out, or, do something active.
It's an interesting point. Yeah. If you can get yourself in the mindset, and it could be from shoes for fitness, for example, like we're talking about, that can change your mentality basically. So,
yes, absolutely.
So shifting gears to the cookbooks that you I think worked on, at least started on years ago, and then, up to kind of what you're working on now. Tell us about, I think you've got 2 best-selling cookbooks, is that right?
I have 2 cookbooks. Both of those cookbooks are focused on simple Asian cooking. Another thing that I try to incorporate in my business world is to be 2 things: multi-talented and multi-platform. So I'll start with multi-talented first, which is how I produce those cookbooks. I wanted to have as many talents as possible. So that means in my food world, that means not only recipe creation, but recipe editing, food photography, food styling, videography, video editing, as many talents as possible. I just felt like I want to do a deep dive into learning about food styling, because I want things to look a certain way without having to pay thousands of dollars to someone else to do it. Yeah. So being multi-talented was incredibly important and absolutely pivotal to Steamy Kitchen growing as a business and to the production of my cookbooks, because I shot, styled, wrote everything in that cookbook. And the second thing that was multi-platform. So, being on podcasts, back then we didn't call them podcasts, but, being on live television, tape television, speaking on stage in front of thousands of people without, melting in my knees, so many, as many platforms as possible. And so I just introduced myself to like, okay, we're going to do live radio next. Okay, I'm scared, but you know what? I'm going to do it anyways, because after I get over this fear and after I do this, I can add that platform to my list of things that I have experience in doing. So multi-platform and multi-talented is what things that were early on that, I focused on. That's what grew Steamy Kitchen, and that's what grew the cookbooks and my audience.
So you're working on a new book at the moment. Why don't you go ahead and share about that?
Sure. So 3 years ago, I went through a really, really tough divorce, really tough. And at the same time, I was, I had this business, Steamy Kitchen, that I was completely ignoring because I was so depressed and so overweight and so lethargic that I just could not focus. And, it was just hard getting up in the morning. I was just so incredibly ridden with anxiety and doubt and self-doubt. So 2 things really helped me. One is asking myself a better question every single morning and living with and waking up with intention. I have 2 life mottos that I live by. One is, how do I create magical moments every single day? How can I create a magical moment for myself and for other people? And then the other life purpose I have is simple pleasures deeply felt. And when I say live with intention in every single moment, those are the 2 questions that I ask, to the point where I actually tattooed it on my arm: simple pleasures deeply felt. That's my intention every day, is to create magical moments and to enjoy the simple pleasures. So that's one thing. And then the second thing that I started doing was microdosing on psychedelics. And that doesn't mean having a big trip. It's such a small, tiny amount, a fraction of a dose. And I use psilocybin. That has just given me groundedness and focus and clarity and happiness. John Hopkins did a massive clinical trial, and they discovered that psychedelics or psilocybin is 40% more effective than SSRIs. And this is John Hopkins. And there's so many clinical trials underway now and so many studies. And I highly recommend anyone to watch Fantastic Fungi on Netflix. That was what began my journey.
Any idea when this next book will be available to read?
Oh, really soon. May 1st is the pre-launch, and it's going to be sort of like a guide. Now, psychedelics are still illegal at the moment. So, I have to be very, very careful on how I frame things in the book, but it's a daily journal. So people that are on their microdosing journey can document what's working, what's not, what am I feeling? Is this, am I, just, if you don't track your progress, you don't know if something works or not. So this is a tool for people who are starting their microdosing journey. But yeah, I just, microdosing has just given me so much, happiness and authenticity, and not being afraid to just be myself and just, drop all the fear of being somebody else. Right. But, two things, authenticity and congruency. That's what I'd say, like, that's really what microdosing has given me. And I still have bad days, I still get knocked off my game, but the speed of how I'm able to flip it is so much greater. And, some things that used to bother me don't bother me anymore. And it's just amazing how microdosing has just changed my life. So my next book is going to be that.
Do we have a title yet or not yet?
I think it's not yet. We're probably going to keep it simple. It's just a microdosing daily journal and a guide.
Okay. So as we look ahead to the future for yourself and your business, where do you see things going over the next 5 or 10 years?
Gosh, I'm always seeking to learn new skills. And I think that, at this point, Steamy Kitchen it's a really nice income. During the pandemic, everyone was staying home and cooking. Yeah. So, while, I was very, very fortunate that the business grew like by 40% during the pandemic, and that growth has kept up. So it's been a really nice business. I really feel my calling is in my zone of genius. My calling is in microdosing and psychedelics. I learned mycology, amateur mycologist. I have a whole room just dedicated to growing mushrooms, whether they are functional mushrooms or gourmet mushrooms or the psychedelic kind. This is something that I just love to do. And, I see the benefits that is given myself and everyone that I know in the microdosing community. And I really feel like that is truly my calling. So I have Steamy Kitchen, this massive platform where we get between 5 million and 8 million page views a month. Yeah. It's a big site. I have a team of people that help me run it. And, this year, our focus is not how to grow bigger. Our focus is how to do better. So I tell that to my entire team. I don't really care about, growing bigger. I just want to do better. I want to do good work, and I want to affect people. I want to, share everything that I've learned to change people's lives. Cool.
Well, is there anything today that you wish I asked that I haven't gotten to?
Gosh, we covered quite a bit. That was a lot. I would just love to say that, I think one of the keys to my happiness now, that is being able to show my work on social now. Before it was all about projecting the perfect image and the perfectly styled recipe. People only get to see in my cookbooks, people only get to see the beautiful photos and in the hours and hours and hours of testing the perfectness of how my table looks.
No messes.
Yeah, no messes, right? But, this year, one of my goals is, my mantras is that my mess is my message. So that means like being vulnerable, being authentic, and showing people all my screw ups. I have 2 Instagram accounts. One is Steamy Kitchen for, the business. And then I have Hey Jaden Rae. HeyJadenRae. And that's where I show my mycology and all the experiments I'm doing in extraction, whether it be cannabis or psilocybin or any other type of psychedelic. But 9 out of 10 times my experiments fail and I'm left with a mess, but I show that anyways, because my message. And it is so much easier to relate to somebody than, when you can see the humanness in them. And that's back to authenticity and congruency. I think, don't portray the perfectness. Everyone wants to know that you're human and can relate to you.
Cool. You've done this already a bit, but anything you want to add in terms of how our audience can find you? You just kind of shared your Instagram channel and one of your websites, but anything else that you want to add to that?
Well, I'm at steamykitchen.com, and then on my website is jadenrae.com. So I would invite anyone, if you want to learn about psychedelics, microdosing, mycology, psilocybin, that's on my personal website. And then anything food related is on Steamy Kitchen.
Cool. Well, Jaden, it's been great to have you on the show today. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. It was great connecting with you.
Lots of fun. I'm Brian Semling, and this is the Fit for Success podcast.